Welcome to the first exercise of the Canvas Bootcamp. If you are new to Canvas programming, this initial exercise is where you begin your training. We use JavaScript to deliver all control and assets to our canvas. Okay, we're going to start with the bare bones of an HTML5 web document, and in the body element, I'm going to go ahead and add my canvas element. So there's the opening tag, and then I put in the closing canvas tag. Now the attributes we want to set are ID, so we can refer to it in our JavaScript and our CSS. Let's also specify the width and the height, which you can also do through CSS, but sometimes you'll get unexpected results if you don't specify the width and the height in the canvas element itself. So I'll also give it a height attribute and make that equal to 300. So we have a canvas with an ID of my canvas that's 400 wide and 300 high. And you can think of your canvas sort of like you would a stage. Now up in the head element, I'm going to put in a style tag that's going to affect the body element and the my canvas element. So the body, I just gave a margin of 40 pixels just so my canvas isn't tucked into the top left corner, and a gray background. Now for the canvas element, I gave it a white background and a black border. Now up in the head element, we also need a script element. Go down a couple of lines and make sure you close that script element. Now the first thing we want to do is in the window.onload event is fire off a function called draw. So naturally above that we need a function named draw. Open close parentheses, opening curly brace, and go down a couple of lines and put in closing curly brace. Now the reason why we put the draw function in the window.onload event is because we want this function to fire off when all of the assets are loaded into the window, including the canvas element. But if you try to program to this canvas element by its ID before it's loaded into the window, it'll fail. So what we do is we just put it in an onload event, then we can draw to that canvas after the window's finished loaded, and that's all that means. So if you just alert yourself right here some kind of message, you'll see that right when you run this page, when it's loaded, it gives you the hello message. That's the window.onload event. And the window.onload event is where you would normally initialize complex applications or complex animations or games. Now the first thing we're going to put within the function is a reference to our canvas rendering context 2D object. And we acquire that by saying var ctx, which is short for context, is equal to document.getElementById. And you just put the ID of the canvas that you wish to target in between single or double quotes. Then we say .get context 2D. So that's how you get access to the canvas rendering context 2D object. Now what that is a constructor in JavaScript that has a list of properties and methods that we can access to achieve certain goals on the canvas. So everything that you do on the canvas is going to be done through this CTX object, which is an instance of a canvas rendering context 2D object, and it represents a flat surface whose origin is 0, 0, 0 x position, 0 y position, so basically at the top left, and the x values increase as you go right, and the y values increase as you go down. So as you go to the right, your x values increase, and as you go down, the y value increases. And you can work on the X, Y, and Z axis on the canvas. Now sometimes you'll see authors making a variable for the canvas itself, and then the next line down they'll get the context 2D for it. But you can do it all in one line just like this. And if you ever need to back reference this canvas element, it's easy to do that in your code. So say for instance you want to get the width or the ID of whatever canvas this CTX object represents or corresponds to. Let's just give ourselves an alert just for testing purposes. You can just go ctx.canvas. Now canvas is a property that you can access that will let you back reference the corresponding canvas that this CTX object corresponds with. So I can just say canvas.id, and that will give me the ID of the canvas. Then I can concatenate to that string a little bar symbol, and then I'll say ctx.canvas.width, and then I'll just do the same thing to list out the height. So now run this in your favorite modern browser, and you see that we get the ID of my canvas, a width of 400 and a height of 300. So we get all the values that we need that correspond to that canvas through its CTX object. So all you do is specify the CTX object, and then you access its canvas property, and then you can access all of the properties of that particular canvas element. You don't have to actually make a variable for the canvas above the CTX variable. You really don't have to do that because you can access the ID, the width, and the height of that canvas element directly through the CTX object. Okay, now I'm just going to comment out this alert that we put in for testing purposes. So what we're going to do in this first lesson is also discuss the 3 methods that are available to the CTX object for creating immediate rectangles on the canvas. So the first thing we're going to do is say ctx.fillRect. We're going to access the fillRect method, and the fillRectangle method gets 4 parameters or 4 arguments: x, y, width, and height. So you got x, y, width, and height. So the x position that I want my rectangle to start at is, let's say, 20. And then the y position is also 20. That way it's not in the top left corner at 0, 0 coordinates. It'll be pushed off of the corner of the canvas a little bit, 20 pixels. And the width I want that rectangle to be is 100, and the height also 100, so it'll be a little square. Now if we look at this in our favorite browser, we have a little square that's 100 by 100, and it's off of the edges in the x position 20 pixels and the y position 20 pixels also. Now let's say we want to draw another little rectangle. We can copy that, and let's say we want to have this one start at an x position of 200 and a y position of 200, but we only want it to be a 50 wide and a 50 high little rectangle. So check that in your favorite browser, and you can see that you have both of your rectangles exactly where you position them. So that's how the fillRect method works. Now there's also something called a strokeRect method. So that's what we'll put under this one. We'll put strokeRect. We'll change this to stroke. And whatever rectangle you want the stroke to be around, if you want to make this stroke be around one of your rectangles, you can just give it the same exact coordinates as that rectangle. So that's what I did. Now if you look at this now, you won't even see it because everything is black. You can kind of see a border, a gray edge around that black. But what I'll do is I'll give a fill style to my little rectangles. So I'll say ctx.fillStyle is equal to, and then I can just put a color, and let's put magenta. Now I'm going to be talking to you guys more about fill styles and stroke styles in later lessons, but for now we're just going to cover the 3 rectangle methods in JavaScript. So now that my little rectangles are both going to be a magenta color, I should now see the stroke a little bit better. Let's check that. See, you can see the stroke around that box a little bit better. Now if I wanted to put another stroke around the little guy, that little box, I can stroke again and have the same coordinates as that little box and the same dimensions, and that gives you a stroke around both. And there's also something called a line width property, and other properties like line width and fill style I'm going to go into a lot more later. Okay, so that's 1, 2 of the methods. There's only one more, and this one will access the CTX object clearRect method. And you can think of this as like an eraser or something to wipe the canvas within a specified rectangle. So that would also be x, y, width, and height. All 3 of these methods, fillRect, strokeRect, and clearRect, they all have the same parameter settings. You give them the x, the y, the width, and the height. So where I want that clearRect to begin is at the top left corner. I'll just put 0 and 0. So 0 for x and y, we'll put it at the top left corner of the canvas. And I want it to clear, or pretty much erase, 100 pixels in. Now let's see what that gives us. So you can see we have both our rectangles drawn again, and they have the stroke around them. And then there's a clearRect method being run right here. So what that did was it pretty much erased that part of the canvas. If you want to erase the entire canvas, you can just put the you can access the CTX canvas.width. You can put that value here and then put the height here, and what that does is it clears the entire canvas. Watch. See? So your shapes were drawn initially, but then they got erased. So we'll leave that back on 100, 100. That way you can actually see the effect of the clear rect. But usually this is used to clear the entire canvas during animations or for creating interactive erasers. Alright, so that is the 3 methods in JavaScript that you can use on the CTX object that create immediate rectangles. There's other ways to draw paths and build paths that will become rectangles that you can fill, but these are the only 3 methods for the CTX object that create immediate rectangles. Alright, so that shows you how to set up your CTX object and put all of your drawing within a draw function that uses the window.onload event. That way you can keep all of your JavaScript up in the head element of your document, and your JavaScript doesn't have to go underneath your canvas element. Alright, that completes exercise number 1.